Today we are going to talk about queues in C program language. So what is queue? A queue is a linear data structure to store and manipulate the data elements. It follows the order of first in first out, or we can say last in last out. For example, a queue for ATM, the person who will gets first in the line will be the first one to use the ATM. So how the queue is implemented in the C program? Queues are implemented using linked list or array, but in the tutorial we will work in the arrays. Now we are discuss about functions. There are two main functions in queues. There are enqueue and dequeue. Enqueue it is adds an element to the end of the queue, and dequeue it is removes an element from queue. Include three more functions which helps to create a program that is not prone to error. These functions are is empty, which is checks whether queue is empty or not. Is full, which is checks whether queue is full or not. Peak, which is gets value at the front of the queue. Working of queue. So we have two pointers. The first one is front and the second one is rear. Start they are pointing at the same value, which is negative and one index. So when we have to the first element inside our queue, it is placed at the 0 index, and the values of front and rear both of these pointers is changed to 0. So currently both of these pointers are pointing at the first element, but when another element joins in the inside the queue, the front element keeps pointing at the first element, but the value of the rear pointer changed to 1, which now points at the second element. Similarly, if you add on 5 elements inside our queue, the front of pointer is joined to the point at the first element, which is placed at the index 0, and the rear pointer is going to place at the last element, which is placed at the index 4. When the first element completes his task or whatever is removed from the queue, the value front pointer changes from 0 to 1, which is now points at the front of the queue. Similarly, when the elements 2, 3 and 4 have finished their task, the front pointer points at the last element, which is the element 5 at in. Now see the code. I'm going to define the variable size of value 5. Then I want to some functions, which is enqueue. This is going to take an integer value and then place it inside our queue. And then we are going to create function called dequeue. This function is going to remove our element at the front and then change the value of the front pointer as well. Lastly, we are going to create function called display. To implement all these things, we need to a queue. So for that, I am going to create integer queue of the name items, and for the size I'm going to pass and the size variable I created, and then we need to point a variable front, which is initially pointing at the index negative 1. Similarly, we need a pointer variable read, which is going to be pointing at the index value negative 1. So now create the function. So first up we have the enqueue function, which is going to take an integer value. The first thing that we are going to do inside this function is check whether our queue has any space left for new members or not. So for that, we use an if statement, and inside if statement we check the value rate pointer to see if it is equal to the size. If there are no space for new members, we simplify use printf to display that queue is full. Else if it is our first element in the queue, then we are going to set the value of front to 0. Otherwise, that we want uh, to do is we want to increase the value of the rear pointer and place the item at the index value of the rear pointer, and then we are going to promote the user that we have successfully insert the value, and then we are going to write out of the dequeue function. So the dequeue function, first thing that we want to check is whether the queue is empty or not. So we have no, if the queue is empty, then the front value will be pointing at the index negative 1. The queue is not empty, we are going to remove an element from the queue. So what we did is that we increase the value Friend value increase the value of the rate, then we simplify put the value of friend to be 1 less than the rate. Lastly, we can have display function. So I want to promote the user when the queue is empty, otherwise I'm going to print the values of the queue using a for loop. So now that we have coded all our functions, we are going to head inside the main function, and we already know that our list is currently empty. This should be give us promote an error. After we check for the error, I'm going to enqueue some integer values. So now this should actually fill up our queue with 5 values, but we still want to try and enqueue other values. So I'm going to enqueue other value, and then I'm going to display the queue after I'm going to try and dequeue and the queue and display it once more. Let's see an executing program. Something at the very beginning, we got the error that the queue was empty, and then we were able to successfully insert 5 integer values. When we tried inserting value 6, we got the error. Queue is full, then we displayed the queue, and we got our elements has 1 2 2 3 4 5. Then we use it to dequeue function and deleting one value. That particular element, our queue becomes 2 3 4 5.